I killed Jacqueline. I killed my girlfriend. But I killed her because she was going to kill you. All of you. The world was going to end if Jacqueline went out that door. I'm going to burn my house down, with myself inside. I'm drinking all the vodka I can handle, then covering this place in gasoline. But first, I'm going to finish this note, so I can tell you what happened. You won't believe me. I hope you don't. Because if you believe me, then that means there's evidence. If there's evidence, that means some of it survived. And that means you're screwed. My name is Kevin Gillard. I'm an entrepreneur. You know what? Screw it. I don't have to tell you extraneous details. I just hiked the entire Appalachian Trail, started in Georgia and ended up here, 50 miles from the end of the trail here in Maine. I found the chamber. Northern Maine is incredibly isolated. You can walk for a week without a sign of human habitation. That's why it was so strange, while the other head of me rose the Mount Katahdin, that I saw a brick. Covered in a light layer of moss, it lay half hidden under a tree root. Curiosity beckoned me to it. After months in the wild, seeing only the occasional town, straight lines hold a magnetic rarity. Also, there was the confusing question of why a brick would be in an isolated stretch of forest. No buildings stood anywhere nearby. I dislodged the brick from the tree root and dusted off the surface. It was grey, carved out of the same stone composing the boulders scattered nearby. An obscure, vaguely sinister carving twisted across one side of the brick. Sometimes you look back on a thought from your past and it's like it wasn't even you that had it. How could I have ever even thought that? That's not me. No, in retrospect, your past self becomes delusional, even schizophrenic. I'm experiencing that now. My fascination with the brick was idiotic. I was 50 miles from finishing the most iconic hiking trail in America, and I decided to hunt for the source of a damn block. Not only was it an asinine misordering of priorities, but there were warning signs everywhere. The occult symbol carved into the stone, the goosebumps on my arm, the fact that a brick shouldn't be in the middle of desolate wilderness. I ignored all these things and walked away from the trail. It would prove to be the worst decision I've ever made in my life, which is about to end after 28 short years. The trees grew much heavier away from the trail, stifling the sky with a thick canopy of needles. I spent an hour or two stumbling around, looking for anything interesting, before I realized I was lost. However, I'm an experienced outdoorsman. It didn't take long to ascertain the direction of the trail with my compass and begin to ascend the rocky ground. A relief that I didn't know I needed washed through me then. The subtle weirdness I'd felt in the forest seemed to melt away as the slope tilted into the sky. I perched on a ridge and spied the trail only a few hundred feet away. But in the other direction, I saw something else. A doorway. An inky rectangle in the wall of a ravine, impossible to spot from anywhere except my position. The hairs on my neck raised themselves, a warning from my subconscious mind. I deliberated with myself on top of that ridge. You're almost done. 2 more days until you finish. Don't get distracted. Exploration is the reason why you like the outdoors. You will always wonder what was in there if you don't at least peek right now. The human brain is such a strange entity, engaged in an endless struggle with itself alone. It's brilliantly innovative, yet full of self-deception and faulty processes. Etched with both the innate drive to survive and a sick attraction to danger. Every mind is a whirring contradiction. Eventually, my whirring contradiction made the choice to explore the door. As I clambered down over rocks, I noticed the breeze of early autumn wafting through the ravine. I'd entered the trail in March, counting on the southern air of Georgia to keep me warm. Now, September had crept over Maine, and at the edges of the days, the weather began to chill. My goosebumps intensified when I finally stood in front of the door. A stone hallway extended far under the rocks, dry air swirling slowly out of the darkness as if the mountain itself was exhaling. As I gazed into the murk, I felt that consistent, gnawing fear grow stronger. This is a bad idea, I remember thinking several times. I grabbed my flashlight from my pack and walked into the passage. It was narrow but high, and seemed to stretch on forever. After 5 minutes or so, I saw a single brick lying on the floor, identical to the one I'd found in the woods. The beam of my light fell on a familiar symbol. I ignored the brick and kept going. The deeper I wandered into the mountain, the more bricks appeared. You must think I'm an idiot, right? I know I was acting like one. Believe me, I know. Regret courses through me every second. When I smell the air in my house, when I see the paws in my hand, when I glance backwards at Jacqueline's body. I'm just going to stop criticizing myself and write what happened. I don't know how much time I have. My fingers are shaking and I feel things shifting within me. Okay, back to it. Eventually, bricks covered the stone walls and the passage began to widen. When a sliver of the setting sun glinted far ahead, I thought I'd made it to an exit. It wasn't an exit. The hallway spilled into a vast, circular chamber, a dome of epic proportions. An orange window of burning evening sky was visible on the ceiling, over 100 feet above me, and in the chamber were stone structures. A dais lay in the middle of the room, with a beam of fading sunlight held dust motes aloft. Pillars stood sentinel on the edges, strange etchings in their blocks, and on the inside of the dome, carved into the arches that rose to the window above me, was an abomination. On first glance, there seemed to be many individual statues entwined with each other across the ceiling in a mad dance. But a closer look revealed that the carving was all one thing, an intricate mass of biological chaos, of organic tendrils and growths. I can't describe it accurately. The stone looked alive, but it was moving ever so slightly in the edges of my vision. I know it wasn't, but let me put it this way. Nobody could stand encircled by that horrific carving and feel okay. It did weird things to the mind. Strange patterns hijacked my senses. I was preparing to leave in fear and haste when I saw the body. Well, less of a body than a crumpled mass, ancient and shriveled. It rested behind the far side of the dais, kneeling as if in prayer. I could feel my limbs shaking, but I had to see it. Maybe it was a prop. Maybe this was some kind of elaborate movie set. It wasn't. When I nudged the body with my foot, it slumped sideways with a dry thud. Grey flakes rose and settled from the corpse. That's when I noticed the box. It was black, metal, simple, not much larger than the bricks. The body had knelt before it, skeletal fingers intertwined into worship to it. Once again, I made a choice that was rational in the abstract and foolish in context. I grabbed the box and stuffed it in my pack. Now I'd have proof that this strange chamber existed, and maybe I could figure out more when I returned home. I could tell the authorities about the ancient body and accompany archaeologists as they explored my discovery. I turned my back on the body and stepped into the tunnel. I expected my unease and fear to dissipate. The mystery was over. The suspense was gone. But as I walked, a sickening pressure of dread pressed against my back, emanating from the chamber. It felt like something was watching me from that room, following me, latching onto me. I swear to God, there were whispers behind me. Never words, but sounds. Or maybe they were in my head. I started sprinting. I felt like a fool while doing it, but when I finally escaped, panting in the cool night air, it felt like I'd crawled through a coffin, an exit from the underground chamber that reeked of death. I walked far, far away from that dark doorway. I made my way back to the trail and walked 5 miles up the mountain, bathed in the silver light of an enormous moon, before I pitched my tent and fell asleep. I dreamt of grey dust and muted sobs. Over the next few days, I calmed down considerably. I tried to open the box, but the lid refused to budge. I couldn't tell if anything was inside it, but I figured I'd just find out when I returned home. The breathtaking mountains seemed to pass in a blur. Before I knew it, I was meeting Jacqueline at the pickup location. Oh no. Jacqueline's body just shifted. I thought she might be alive, but she's dead as that skeletal corpse in the chamber. But the thing inside her is not dead. And it just coiled. I heard friction against the carpet and turned to see her body, curling and twitching. Damn, I have to finish this, fast. So I told Jacqueline about the chamber and showed her the box during the 5-hour drive back to our place. She blamed me for not snapping photos and of that demented ceiling. I couldn't explain what the carving had done to my mind, how it had demanded my eyes and twisted my senses. We talked and caught up on everything. She'd visited me at various points along the trail, including a few weeks ago. So, the biggest piece of new controversial material sat unopened in the trunk. What should we do if there's something really valuable in the box? Should we call someone and tell them about the body in the chamber? Or just keep it to ourselves? She asked me. Let's just see what's in it first, then we'll talk about whether to call anyone. The body was like a century old, so I think you can wait a little longer for the authorities, I joked. I was in high spirits, enough to be laughing about the unsettling things I'd seen. A night in my own bed, with the love of my life laying in front of me. Jacqueline's next words made me feel like a shadow of the unknown had followed me out of the mountains. Are you sure we should open it at all? When we arrived home, I decided the chamber, the body, and their mysterious metal box had taken up too much of my time. I would open the damn thing then and there. Jacqueline, having driven a car for many hours in a row, went upstairs to shower. I went into the garage with a box and a sense of purpose. Out came a hammer and a screwdriver. It only took 10 minutes to wrench the lid off the box. As you've read, you've probably become just as curious as I was. Maybe even more so, given that you know how this story ends. Want to know what was inside that box? A piece of paper. There was a slip of century-old yellow paper with a few lines of ink. It fell out with a light sprinkle of grey dust. I could tell as soon as it fluttered to the workbench that it was nothing of value. Nothing that merited all the suspense. Guess what was written on it? A poem. A damn poem. Taking this thing from a surreal tomb, carrying it dozens of miles across the mountains, discussing it for 5 hours on the ride back home, for a poem and some dust. My disappointment fell away and dread bubbled to the surface when I read it. The hairs on my arms raised, and I felt as if something from a great distance had suddenly come much closer. I didn't understand it at the time, but looking at it now, I think I get it. From the cold and distant gloom and muted gurgles of the mind, he calls, a perfect doom for worms so weak and blind. We, with unknown means, create his just and cruel commands. We fall in holy hate. Our tubes become his hands. I remember feeling a tight knot in my stomach, the same way I'd felt looking at the carving, as if I saw a crack in the veil of reality, and there was something foul behind it. Then, exhaustion settled over my anxiety like drifting ashes. I walked upstairs in a trance and collapsed into bed. "What's wrong, babe?" said Jacqueline. "Was there anything in the box?" "Nothing," I told her to answer both questions. And then I was out. This time, in my dream, the grey powder filled skies across the world, and there was no place without muffled cries. Jacqueline just sat up, moved herself into a kneeling position, hands out front, head bowed, like she's praying. Her skin, what's left of it, is grey. She's dead. I know she's dead. I need to finish. I woke up to screaming, horrified screaming. Jacqueline was next to me in bed, shrieking and scrambling away from me, tears leaking from her eyes. There was something wrong with her skin. I rubbed my eyes and blinked. That's when I noticed it was on my hands as well. Holes. Small holes, about the size of the nail on my pinky finger, covered Jacqueline's entire body, her face. They were on my hands, my arms, my whole body. I screamed too. It took around 10 minutes to gather myself and go to the bathroom to get a better look, to figure out what was happening. Jacqueline whimpered in the fetal position. I wanted to comfort her, but couldn't find the words. First, I had to figure things out. I'd look in the bathroom. I'd recognize that this was some uncommon disease, and we'd go to the hospital and fix it. That was my plan. The holes were everywhere, but clustered in dense, honeycomb-like patches. Each was about half an inch deep, with red, irritated skin at the bottom. The edges of the holes, the parts that weren't soft and sunken, were rough and almost brittle. I gagged as I ran my fingers over my pockmarked skin. The feelings of disgust and fear I felt. I didn't know what disease this could be, but it was like nothing I'd ever heard of. running my hands over my pockmarked body, feeling the squishy pits and their tough trims all over my damn skin. My face, a porous mass of flesh, no longer looked human in the mirror. I felt a great helplessness overwhelm me, a whisper in my mind telling me that nothing but prayer could possibly save me now. Prayer, like the praying body. And then I realized. The dust. The grey dust in that box. It was something foul. Some kind of spore or virus. And it had infected me. And it had infected Jacqueline too. That's when I understood that I was not escaping this. I would not live. Neither would Jacqueline. A sickness from some unknown had crawled into our bodies. I understood my dreams and the poem. I understood that we were the first, that we were meant to spread our affliction to all of humanity. I couldn't let that happen. Jacqueline moaned from the other room. "We have to go to the hospital," she repeated. "No," I said. "What?" I heard the confusion in her voice, and above it all, a thick, suffocating disgust. Jacqueline didn't like the holes. She didn't even like the bubble bath I once prepared because of the bubbles reminded her of holes. She was in hell. "Jackie," I said, "something is really, really wrong, and we're not going to get better." "What are you saying? How do you know?" Her questions rose in a note of panic. This came from the powder in the box, and it infected us. You weren't even exposed to the original spores, but you were exposed to me, which means it's contagious, airborne, and it sets in fast. We can't go outside." I was strangely calm now that I'd accepted it. The only problem was how to die without letting others get infected, and how to deal with Jacqueline. She became hysterical, had a panic attack, tried to leave. I wouldn't let her. I felt as if the world was depending on me. If the corruption inside our bodies left this house, it would ravage our species. I knew that from the dreams. Eventually, she grew violent. She tried to shove me away and rushed through the front door. I had to stop her. At first, I only wanted to knock her out, so we could spend a few more hours together. But when my hands, distorted with the holes, closed around her porous throat, I realized I didn't want her to suffer. I would do this myself. And so I squeezed and wept. And now I'm typing this out. My insides are churning with new organs, the holes in my skin growing deeper, my head spinning. The air is heavy with a musty, death-like odor. I am not long for this world. Jackie's body is sitting now, praying to the thing out there that made this sickness. A fleshy tube of fungal growth has sprouted from the back of her neck. Grey powder puffs out of it. I can sense the parasite compelling me to leave the house and to kneel, to bow my head and let the tube emerge. I will not let this evil thing use my own body to pollinate the world with death. I hope I don't survive. I love you, Jackie. And to everyone else, good luck.